Are they human? Well, yes. Are they Leinster? Well, they are again. That was a bit more like it from the boys in blue, wasn't it? And they have set up a final in Dublin, the first European URC final so far, and they have also guaranteed that we will have 100% a fourth different URC champion in 4 years, which is an amazing stat, really, isn't it? That speaks to the competition at the top end of the URC. I suppose you could even count it as 5 years, 5 different winners in 5 years if you count the Rainbow Cup and Benetton. Up to you whether you do. Here's some thoughts about Leinster against Glasgow Warriors, the latter the season has ended. Some thoughts on Glasgow, some thoughts on Leinster, some thoughts looking ahead to the final. And thank you for bearing with me. I arrived in Greece yesterday. Oh, feel free, by the way. Already posted one video today, and quite rightly getting absolutely ripped for the paleness of my skin. Spot the lad who lives in Manchester. Mind you, this is probably compared to a Glasgow tan, this is good, I reckon, 'cause that's probably the only place that's even greyer and wetter than Manchester. But yeah, arrived yesterday. Wanted to spend time with my family. The game, the Leinster Glasgow game was actually on while I was on the flight, and I did buy the internet on the plane. It just didn't work very well, so I caught what I could. But I've now caught up and watched the game, and I have some thoughts. I'm sure you do too. So please let me know in the comments down below what you think. And thank you for watching the channel. Hit subscribe and give a thumbs up and all that sort of stuff. So firstly, Glasgow, right? I feel for them. The reigning champs, key players out, and I think it affected them disproportionately versus Leinster, and I'll come on to Leinster in a minute. But just on Glasgow, I thought, guys like George Horn they were sort of sub where they have been, subpar. I think that was a symptom of the power game that Leinster brought, and the fact that scrum time Glasgow were getting pumped. But I think maybe the bigger talking point here is and I don't know if you're a Glasgow fan, maybe even a fan of Scottish rugby, this might speak to a wider issue about the depth, and also maybe the lack of work that's been done on cultivating and nurturing that depth. Because there were players playing in this game that, when you look at the minutes they've played for Glasgow, not nearly enough to go into a big URC semi-final. And so, for example, I think Glasgow are maybe arguably too reliant on Xander Fagerson. I think he comes in and it just feels completely different, and a lot of the pieces fall into place, and Xander Fagerson's not there, and it looks so different. And I always talk up Xander Fagerson as a player that can play a full 80-minute match, and he does for Scotland and for Glasgow. I just wonder how much of that is he plays 80 minutes because the backup isn't good, or, and this is kind of what I'm driving at, is the backup not as good because you don't give them enough minutes and you play Xander Fagerson for 80. I don't know. It's a catch-22 chicken and egg situation. So let me know what you think. But building depth is the challenge for Scotland, for Glasgow, and it showed up in this game. Tactically, they didn't execute well at all. Adam Hastings alongside George Horn, not convinced by Hastings. Good player when you packs on top and he can step onto the ball, but I don't know, is he going to boss it when it's tricky? Tough one. The two winners of the semi-finals as well were the two teams that were the happiest without the ball, and the pressure game that Leinster applied through kicking intelligently, chasing hard, having their defensive system organised to back up the kicks, just pressed Glasgow. And then the weather, the fact it was poor weather first half, and 25-5 at half time, the game was basically done, wasn't it? So Franco Smith said there were tears in the changing room at full time. Their reign on the URC Championship is over for now. They've got a lot of credit in the bank, but it just felt they started to wobble. They've had key players out at key times: Hugh Jones, Xander Fagerson today, Jack Dempsey, Matt Fagerson. They had Carl Steyn out for a chunk earlier in the season, and I guess that's what led to them having to go on the road in this semi-final, because they were looking good for second only a month or so ago. But there you go, that's Glasgow. As for Leinster. Firstly, what's going on with the seagulls in the Aviva Stadium? I'm fully aware, by the way, that it's right by the sea, so I know that's where seagulls generally tend to live. I know that's stating the obvious, but so many of them. Just, I don't know. Are they just being given free tickets because of the because of the lack of punters that were in there? What was it, about 15,000? Now 15,000, that's not too bad. Like, I think Leinster have averaged 15,000 over this season, which is decent. But it didn't look good in the Aviva, and backing up from the Scarlets when it was less than that, was it 11,000 last week? And then you compare it to the other semi-final in Pretoria where it was packed out, 48,000. The apathy. Now, I get there's a lot of things going on here. A lot of things going on. It's expensive. Leinster are involved in a lot of big matches, and so you can't go to them all. But does it speak to a little bit of apathy from the fringe fans? Like I say, their Leinster's average attendance over the season is 15,000, and in the RDS that makes for an amazing atmosphere. But the fact that the people that usually would come along for the big matches have chosen to swerve the last two, does that speak to something deeper? Interesting one. I don't have the answers there. I've no idea how full Croke Park is going to get by next week. I sort of mentioned it on the video earlier. It'll be 82,000 people, but I guess a 5-day turnaround, that's a pretty tough thing to organise and sell, isn't it? So probably won't be 80 odd thousand. How close will it be? Half full? I don't know. Is there a scheduling issue that URC should change to make that? I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, let's talk about the good things from Leinster, because there was lots of that to talk about. It was much more like Leinster, this performance. I love Tommy O'Brien. That is a guy who just does everything 100%. Just runs full speed all the time, everything. He just has one gear, and it is turbocharged. And yeah, he's brilliant. And in terms of form, he might be you could make an argument he's, along with maybe Tommy Freeman, the form wingers in British and Irish rugby. So if there is an injury and a call-up, maybe he could be playing himself onto a trip to Australia. Jamie Osborne as well bounced back from a poor performance. Last week I wasn't convinced by him at 13 at all. I thought maybe that's because he was outside centre and he wasn't very good, but actually he looked really good. And if he can carry on playing like that, there might be an argument that he could become the first choice in that position, or take his pick of positions before long. I thought Sam Prendergast, his game management's really good. I talked about how important that was. The kicking game, Hastings and Horn didn't get on top of it. Prendergast did. That's the one thing he does really, really well, is just put his team in the right areas. There are much talked about things that he doesn't do so well, and I do worry about this, because it's become a thing now, because he's been thrown in at international rugby very early and did all right. But his tackling is clearly an issue. And there was one point where he put in his first kind of actual tackle he managed to make. And there was a big cheer from the crowd. And I kind of thought, God, if it's got to the point where it's that much of a thing where people are cheering a regulation tackle, it's a little bit of a worry. But anyway, I thought he was really good. Thomas Clarkson, very strong performance. Good in the scrum, good around the park, got himself a try. And all these guys that I've mentioned so far are the next gen of Leinster players. They're the guys who a year ago were the backups, and they're looking like they're ready to take over. And I think that's a really good thing. Having talked about the issues with Glasgow and their next gen, well, Leinster have got them. I thought Jimmy O'Brien looked good as well. And of course, the players I haven't mentioned, Ryan Baird was excellent. He got man of the match, which, yeah, he played very well, and good on him. Loved the way he spoke after the game, actually. Like he sounded battered, but also he just sounded like, yeah, there's a bit of kind of anger, resentment, frustration there. And I think it was that anger, resentment, frustration that looked like it fueled Leinster. And I think they want to harness that again for the final. It seemed like a powerful cocktail to go into that with. And the one player I've not mentioned so far, who is a cheat code, a freak, one of the best rugby players, let alone hookers on the planet. Dan Sheehan is incredible. I love that guy. He's so good. He just sees things so quickly. He's so athletic that he can act upon it as well. He made about 3 carries in the first minute and set the tone. And that's the kind of talismanic figure. And when you think back to a lacklustre Leinster in the last month where he's been sat on the bench, it's not that it doesn't really matter these days whether you're on the bench or starting from a minute's point of view, because quite often you can play, hookers don't tend to play more than 50 minutes anyway, and you can play 50 minutes starting on the bench. South Africa do that a lot with Malcolm Marx. But there's something about Dan Sheehan being on the pitch and not only throwing his weight around while he's on there, but actually leading the charge and being a leader. And that's what he was in his deeds. I've no idea about in his words, but I'm sure he was doing that as well. And the Leinster bench, having just talked about Dan Sheehan starting, the Leinster bench, when Dan Sheehan is on it, adds significantly. The Leinster bench without Dan Sheehan on it, funnily enough, didn't really add a lot, but the game was already won. So maybe that played into that. Leinster lost the second half. The bench didn't really add. I don't know. I think the fact that the game was won, we can probably let that one go. And who haven't I mentioned? Oh yeah, James Lowe. Do you know what? There's been a lot of talk in the last week or so about shithousery in rugby, and I kind of like it for the most part, as long as it's within the the boundaries of acceptable conduct, which for the most part it is. And it is with James Lowe. He's just got that kind of shithouse energy, which I kind of love. And he's one of those players like Owen Farrell, Maro Itoje, Dan Bigger, Johnny Sexton. The kind of characters, the people that if they're on your team, you love them. If they're playing for the opposition team, you can't stand them. And I love that about James Lowe. And I was just thinking as I was watching this, I get to cheer for James Lowe in a couple of weeks. That's one of the things I love about the Lions tour. I get to celebrate when James Lowe's being a bit of a shithouse. Leinster were very good. Joe McCarthy as well talked after the game about, we know everybody hates us. And as I say, you heard it in Ryan Baird's voice and what he said. You could feel it in the energy as they took to the pitch. There was a bit of anger. And I think Leinster should harness that. They should take that. They should buy into that siege mentality. They should be saying, everyone hates us. Everyone wants the Bulls to win this final. And that will fuel some energy. It will fuel the fans. And I think Leinster looked really good. 25-5 at half-time. The game was done 37-19. Comfortable win in the end. Yeah, bring on the final. First final in Europe. A new name on the trophy. Lots of time between now and then for me to build up to it, which I will be doing. There's some thoughts. Give me yours in the comments down below. Hit subscribe and I'll see you on the next one.